Everyone should be able to hear this.
When we was taught about Jesus, we was...
You can hear that, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
loud and clear,
cool.
loud and clear.
Okay,
loud and clear.
cool. What am I doing? Give me 2 seconds. Do I have a TikTok account as well? Yep, the TikTok account is called King Context. You can follow me there if you like. All right, cool. Let's see. Guys, tap the screen, smash the like button, all that good stuff. All right, let's watch this. Let's listen to him now. This is one of his students. He's got students, I guess, all over America and different parts of the world as well. They're all teaching. So just think about this, right? Think about like a hierarchy structure. He's at the top. He learned this from his leaders 20 plus years ago. Just to kind of give you guys context here. This, like, he didn't invent this doctrine, this belief, this teaching. He learned this from his elders before. He's obviously started his own group called IUIC, Israelites United in Christ. Now he's obviously teaching his group. So people under him now, they're all teaching the same stuff, right? So then when you think about it from that perspective, it's like a system, like a conveyor belt, which is churning out the same stuff. You're not really going to hear someone in these sorts of groups say something different. They want to always be aligned in their doctrine because they want it to just go all the way back.
Right.
All right. So let's listen to what he says. And yeah, we'll get into it. Cool.
When we was taught about Jesus, we was not taught that he was a black man like the Bible describes him. Now, I'm going to read that for you because you...
So just notice, he said, when we were taught about Jesus, we were not taught that Jesus was a black man. And like Brother Maverick said earlier on, it's like, it's very black superiority, black empowerment, etc. And not just true to what the Bible actually says. So he's obviously now going to tell us where the Bible teaches that Jesus was black. And I should have said this earlier on. It's like, Maverick said it earlier anyway, like Jesus was more likely of a darker skin tone, but that's not the point. So my point of doing this sort of video, because the crazy thing is you hear a lot of people, like a lot of Hebrew Israelites, this is what they do ad hominem. Oh, this guy is a coon, he's a coconut, he's just, they say so much crazy stuff. My contention, my problem is always with their misuse of the Bible. If you want to make a case from history, go ahead. That ain't my field. I'm not going to jump into all of those weeds, right? What I do is always biblically based. So I'm going to look at the biblical verses they're using to make their case and show you why it doesn't make any sense. If it made sense, I would be with them saying, yeah, it makes sense. But just listen to what he's going to do now as he breaks it down, right?
May not know. The churches may not have taught you. Let's go over to Revelations 1 and verse 14. All right. It says, his head and his hairs were white like wool. Who's this talking about? The black Messiah, Jesus Christ. It says his head and his hairs were white and woolly. Who got woolly textured hair? You got woolly textured hair on this earth. Black folks got woolly textured hair. I should say so-called black folks, right? But let's read on. It says as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. He wasn't shooting laser beams out his eyes, but the Bible prophesied in Genesis 49 that Christ would come drinking wine. His eyes would be red with wine. But when we was taught about Jesus, we was not taught that he was a black man like the Bible describes him. Now, I'm going to read that for
short clip, but he basically breaks down their belief system, right? Apparently he starts it off by creating conspiracy theory, right? Christians haven't been taught this because for some reason Christians are hiding from church members Revelation chapter 1 in the Bible. That's what they want you to believe. And then they'll turn around and say, look, when you read these verses, this is exactly what it says. Now, what I want us to do, we can open up the passage, right? And I'll show you the major errors they make in order to hold this belief, right? Which is obviously crazy on so many different levels. Now, we can read it. I'll read it out of the King James Version because that's their preferred translation, right? But this actually is funny. So, and I'll walk you through how they kind of come to these conclusions. So, you'll hear a lot of them, as you heard that guy say in the video. And again, Guys, the link is in the chat on YouTube if you want to, if you're a Hebrew Israelite and you want to call in and have a conversation. If you're on TikTok, request up. I'm willing to have a conversation with you and we can walk through this together if you so choose. But I won't be surprised if no Hebrew Israelite calls up, right? I'll just put it out there. But so Revelation chapter 1 verse 14 says, this is very key. This is why you have to pay so much attention. It starts by saying his head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. So what basically happens is when you hear Hebrew Israelites, Maverick, and everyone else who's listening, right? When you hear Hebrew Israelites go to this passage, many of them will read the verse. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were a flame of fire. Many of them will read it. Some people have learned some of the art, some of them have heard the way to rebut these arguments, so they won't even read part of the verse because they know it destroys them. But basically, you see at the beginning of the verse how it says his head and his hairs are white like wool. When they read it out loud, the reader will most likely read it, but then they will immediately say, well, as he said in the video, who are the people out there who have hair like wool? Who have hair like wool? When you actually read the verse, it says his head and his hairs were white like wool, which makes it totally different. Because if you think about it, and I always say, I've said it in videos, I say it all the time, if you ever speak to a Hebrew Israelite who's trying to make this case and they've read this verse and then, asked you that question, whose hair is white like wool? Just simply ask them to touch their head. Right. And as soon as they touch their head, they'll realize, right, this is all your head, everything here, your whole head. Yep. And the moment go on.
And you know what's crazy about that, brother, is, and I'm so sorry to cut you off.
Oh, that's cool.
But what I think is ironic as well.
Thanks for the follow at 16.
If you can see me on camera, I am a Hispanic male.
Yep. Whose
hair is just as wavy and just as woolly and coiled as any African American or black person you've ever met. Right? Mm-hmm. There are Hebrew people who have hair the same way. Yep. I have met people in every nation and continent minus Antarctica in this world that are not black that have wavy coiled hair, right? Yep. So yes, even though black people typically, because not every black person has woolly hair either, right? Mm-hmm. Even though black people typically have woolly hair, right? This is not, again, you have to purposely skip over the plain reading of what this says. So, again, I did the same thing and I went into Google and I typed literally white like wool. I challenge anybody out there who's listening to this or watching this.
Yep.
Go into Google and just type in white like wool. Don't type in anything else. Don't make it biased. Just type that in. The moment that I type that in, I'm going to tell you what Google said. The phrase white like wool primarily refers to a description of Jesus in the Bible's book of Revelation, symbolizing his holiness, purity, and divinity.
Yeah.
It is also used to describe God in Daniel 7:9 and the purity of sin being washed away in Isaiah 1:18. Some scholars, this is where it starts talking about their stuff. Some scholars also interpret the woolly description as a clue that Jesus had darker skin and hair with a specific texture. Now, I'm glad that it was honest about the fact that some people think that, because I don't want them to hide that, right? Yeah. Here's the problem. In order for that to make sense, you have to do what so many people do and skip over the plain reading of what this actually says.
Exactly.
This literally says that it refers to the description of Jesus that symbolizes his holiness, purity, and divinity. And it says it clearly, and his head and hairs were white like wool, as the snow, and his eyes as a flame of fire, right? Yeah. So again, there's nothing here that states that Jesus having white hair automatically means he has dark skin, because I promise and guarantee you, there is someone of every single race and ethnicity on this planet that has white hair like wool, whiter than you've ever seen. I've seen them. I've seen plenty of Caucasian people with white hair. There's nothing in this verse. What they're doing is they're doing the same thing that Muslims try to do when speaking about the Islamic dilemma. Yes, the Quran affirms the Bible only partially, only a general affirmation. Ask them what the chapter and verse is. Well, you have to make an inference. No, I don't.
Yep.
No, I don't. Your Quran is a detailed explanation of all things as it describes itself. So don't read your own myopic little views into it. And that's exactly what the Black Hebrew Israelites are doing. They are reading their own view into it, where there is no room for interpretation here, ladies and gentlemen. There's no inference to Jesus' skin color, nor would he even want anyone discussing something so trivial. What are we even talking about here?
The crazy thing about it is, it's like it's so foreign to them just to focus on verse 14 and pin them down to John writing his head. That totally shatters everything in their doctrine, because obviously you've heard both of these guys in these videos, like race is a gospel issue for them. That is part of the gospel message, and because of that, when you think about it from that perspective, it's like for them to know, wait, hold on, I've been preaching and teaching this whole time that this is a verse which says his hair is white like wool, and it means it's woolly hair. That's black people's hair. But it's like, if you go back to the beginning of the verse and you think about it, it's like, it's not saying his head and his hair was woolly. That's not what it's saying.
That's not what it's saying.
That's their forced interpretation.
And imagine, and see, and that's, but isn't that what's crazy about it? Is that they think that John, while he is writing this, exiled on the island of Patmos, is going to waste divinely inspired revelation by describing the texture of someone's hair. No, he couldn't possibly be talking about the holiness and purity of Jesus Christ. No. He must be saying that Jesus got that woolly, thick, curly, coiled hair. What? Why? Where anywhere in here? Here's the thing. It's because you have to want it to mean that, right? Because that's the only way that you can see that. But we live in a world of people who are not going to check, guys. If you don't check and you believe this stuff, the burden is completely on you.
Exactly.
You have to check this stuff out, guys. Don't ever believe anything anybody ever just tells you just because. You can't do that. You have to look this stuff up.
Exactly. It's right there in the verse. So many times when you hear them talk about it, they'll be like, his head and his hair was white like wool. And they'll be like, they totally skip over it. As soon as they've read the verse, they don't mention head again. Because imagine reading the verse and then saying, well, his head, like, who has woolly hair? Like, whose head is white like wool? Like, it would totally destroy everything. And you know what they tried to say in response? They're like, it's talking about the hair on his head and the hair on his beard.
Right.
Which is them reading into the text. They're adding to the text, which is why I say Hebrew Israelites are liars. Because the moment you show them this verse, they will start doing mental gymnastics in an instant. And there was a comment on, someone put a comment, someone was saying, Stacy was saying, it says his eyes are like fire, right? Blacks don't have eyes like fire, do they? And the funny thing is, it's like, they said it in the second video. They go back to a passage in Genesis, which talks about drinking wine with moderation, having eyes like fire, basically. So they'll say, well, that's because Jesus drank wine in moderation, so that's why his eyes are orange, etc. But they've obviously got interpretations for all of this stuff, but it goes against the clear reading of the text, quite obviously. And their interpretations to try and get around it just don't even make any sense. And the funny thing is, it's like, there's no good response to you asking them, what color is his head, if he's talking about white hair?
Right.
If you follow it consistently and you don't read into the text, it's saying his head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow. And it's the crazy thing about it is, it's like, this is not a passage talking about the literal skin of Jesus. Like, this is not a passage to tell us his skin tone. It's not, because if you read this passage in context, the other thing they talk about is in verse 15, where it talks about, you mentioned it earlier, and they said it in the video, where it says his feet are like fine brass. So they're like, well, his feet are brown. So he's got woolly hair, which is black hair, they say, and he's got brown feet. It's a passage which is saying that he's black. But again, it disregards how the verse actually starts by saying his head, right. And his hairs. So
you can't talk about that though. It's don't say it to them because you know they're gonna get mad. They don't want you to talk about that.
You can't, and this is the thing. It's like you can't take one part of the verse and make it sound a certain way, and then take the other part of the verse and try and disregard it. You have to take them both together, unless there's some like really valuable, vital reason, something compelling in the verse or in the context of the passage telling you this. If that isn't there, they're just making something up.
Yeah,
and it's crazy. Like, they've been continuing to like spread lies like this for years and years and years and years, and it's because like no one will check them on it. Like, this is their go-to verse, this is their main verse in the Bible to prove Jesus is black.
and if that's what they're hanging their hat on, then it's bad. It's a bad time, man.